Anything in particular that sparked your interest in exploring AI and innovation at Raymond? What challenges have you faced in balancing this pursuit with daily operations?
One of the things to get back in kind of the mindset of the industry was Ray gave me a project, go do a big roof survey project. And I was a little shocked when I was assigned it, not because I've done roof surveys before, it's fine. I don't mind doing them, but where was the technology? We were still doing things where you just get a notepad out, or maybe we drew it in AutoCAD, simple line drawings, and we're up there taking.
Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. Over 90% of small businesses struggle to innovate like larger firms. Limited resources, lack of dedicated teams, and constant pressure to keep things running. But with AI and other emerging technologies rapidly reshaping the AEC industry, standing still is no longer an option. Today's episode, I'm joined by Mike Ramos, president of Raymond, to talk about what it really takes for a small firm to become a technology leader. From launching an internal innovation working group to turning abstract AI concepts into real-world use cases, Mike shares how his team is making innovation happen without burning out. If you're running a small firm or working inside one and wondering how to stay competitive, adapt, and lead in the age of AI, this episode is for you. I'm your host, Nick Heim, and this is the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast. With that, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, it's now time for our conversation of the week with Mike Ramos. Mike, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I've been looking forward to chatting a little bit about AI, and I'll turn it over to you. Let's get started.
Yes, sir. So, Mike, we just like to get started with a little bit of background on our guests, just so the audience is aware kind of where you're coming from. So, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how your experiences shaped your path to becoming president of Raymond?
Sure. So I'm a little bit atypical when it comes to the architecture and engineering construction industry. I'm on the AE side. Raymond is a full service architecture and engineering firm that specializes in building envelope. For me, I'm actually a chemical engineer. You don't see a lot of chemical engineers in the industry. You do see some, and I'm proud. I'm always happy to see those chemical engineers pop up here and there. I'm also different. Because I'm a chemical engineer, I didn't go straight into this industry. However, I've been involved with Raymond since it started in 1992. Our founder, Ray Ramos, is my father. And so when he started the company part-time in 92 as a roof and waterproofing consulting firm, I got to go up on roofs as a 6th and 7th grader, being the dumb end of the stick, helping out with IR surveys back in the early 90s. And I've always kept track of what is going on in the company. I've been an intern a couple of times prior to coming on full time. I've been on the board for about the last 10 years. And I like to say I'm a recovery management consultant. So, and that kind of leads to this conversation because in my consulting days, I did a lot with technology. I ran a very special team when I was at Booz Allen Hamilton, where we got to prototype a lot of tech, where we take commercially available off the shelf technology, or COTS, if you're familiar with the term, and daisy chain it together, build prototypes, see if they would work for the applications and the use cases that we had. And then if the customers liked it, we eventually hand that over to the development team, and they build these full scale platform level software for different customers. And so coming out of the consulting space, I'm more familiar with technology and business. And there was an opportunity in my career and where Ray was wanting to head with the transition out of engineering as he headed towards retirement. I could come in. I started as our executive vice president, and over the last couple of years, led into the president role and been happy to do it. And we've been growing Raymond very successfully during that time.
Really well said. And Mike, you're actually probably in the perfect vertical and right, restoration, waterproofing, right? Because I sit through all of these presentations on the chemical compositions of these materials, and I think, man, I wish I would have paid better attention to freshman year chemistry. But I'm sure your background helps a little bit when it comes to that type of stuff.
So actually the chemical engineers or the chemists, I have a degree in chemistry too. They tend to be on the manufacturing side. So I always enjoy my conversations, especially with roofing, waterproofing, building envelope type materials, those manufacturers. I'll get into it. It's like, well, is a polyester, is that a vinyl? Like those types of things. It's kind of fun to, dabble in, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's a good background to have. So we know a little bit about like your background and how you got into the technology space, but So, anything in particular that sparked your interest in exploring AI and innovation at Raymond? And the second part of the question is, what challenges have you faced in balancing this pursuit with daily operations?
So, great question. So I came in with kind of this fresh perspective. And so I started, give or take, about Labor Day of 2017. So coming up on 8 years with Raymond, and that's gone well. But one of the things to get back in kind of the mindset of the industry, even though I had interned years and years beforehand, was Ray gave me a project. Go do a big roof survey project up in the Columbus, Ohio area. And I was a little shocked when I was assigned it, not because I've done roof surveys before. It's fine. I don't mind doing them, but it's where was the technology? We were still doing things where you just, get a notepad out, or maybe we drew it in AutoCAD, simple line drawings. And we're up there taking a photo and then trying to mark on, this horrible little thing and building a legend in real time. And that was what I found to be actually the easier part, because then you get back to the office and you've got to build this report almost from scratch, maybe pull a previous one. And it's just like, we've got to be better at this. This is 2017. iPhones have been around for a while. iPads have been around for a while. Android devices, whichever tablet, hardware you like. And I was pretty shocked within my first 30 to 60 days that the industry didn't seem to have a solution for some of the lowest hanging fruit you can imagine from a technology perspective. And that ended up leading to some of the first software we ever created. And so I would say from the very beginning of my experience being in the industry, I've been thinking about at minimum technology. What that led to by the end of 2017, I'm maybe famous for saying this, and the people that I talk to is, why aren't we aiming bigger? And that's where the AI part comes from. And I'm a big movie fan. I've always said since that time period that why aren't we aiming for us being Tony Stark, the designer, working with Jarvis? I've said this for years. Now, the interesting part about that is for the first few years, everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. This is never going to happen. And the only thing that changed their mind was when ChatGPT all of a sudden hit the scene, years later, end of 23, end of 22, sorry.
22, yeah.
Yep, end of 22. And all of a sudden, Mike isn't a crazy person. Mike was just talking in a way that maybe I didn't understand at the time, right? And so I've been a big proponent of this, and I've talked to a lot of people in the industry. One of our biggest limiting factors has been the fact that we were, and to this day are still technically a small business. So the challenges have been about, can a small business really do what you'd ideally want to do, right? AEC, and I'm going to speak more on the AE side more than the C side, but on the AE side at least, margins tend to be relatively low for industry-wide. We're not a tech industry where you have 40, 60 higher percent margins. Net incomes, on average, approaching maybe 15 to 20% for your average AE company. If you look at some of the latest reporting out of like Dell Tech and things like that. And so when I joined in 17, we were about 45 people. We did not have the resources in order to build anything. In fact, the very first software we ever built, I actually raised money for in order to build it on the side so we could have that. And Raymond was our first customer. It's the one advantage we had is I was our executive vice president at the time. I'm our president now, but I can say, thou shalt use this software if I say so. And that was how we got our first users, not paying users per se, but test users were incredibly important. That's maybe an advantage we have that a startup doesn't have. Our users are built in. We can test these things very quickly, but we've always been hamstrung by how much can we actually invest in order to get this going. As we've grown, we've started to bring software developers in-house. We have a couple full-time developers. We tend to bring in software interns to kick off kind of exploratory projects and then hand them off to a full-time developer. On occasion, we could contract out some IT development if we have search support. But the biggest challenge from a day-to-day basis is, what kind of investment can I make? And luckily for us, I'm our champion here at Raymond. So I've made this a big priority for us. And I believe this year we're really going to see the fruits of our labor. carrying forth with some of the new software that we're developing for only in-house use and that we're taking to market. I will say, just as a side note, the biggest barrier to adoption, especially if you developing apps, has absolutely been, does someone remember their Apple username and password? We've got incredibly professional, experienced personnel, or I worked with other people that use our apps that are, these leaders of industry, but that username and password, we don't write down those things, not the ones that can't be saved in a browser.
And so, funny enough, Mike, I don't actually think we talked about this, but summer, fall of 2017, you can go to my LinkedIn profile. It's right there. I was also on a roof assessment, and I also had an 11 by 17 drawing, a clipboard, and a pen, and it was click, photo 1, tear and membrane, click, photo 2, counter flashing missing. And it was crazy. Like, I couldn't believe I was at this industry leading firm, and like, that was the process.
If you need some software, I have software for you, and it's incredibly affordable. In fact, Raymond is not even the biggest user of our software at this point. Other firms use it on a scale that I did not even realize up until recently.
Which is, you're right. If you're in the audience and you're in an inspection based business, please, talk to Mike and see what he's got. But, other points I heard from the answer to that question, right? So the executive champion, right? Somebody who's going to push innovation forward in the industry, who actually within a company and understands it, right? The build versus buy discussion, right? It sounds like you guys do enough of both. And then password managers.
Yes.
Because it's crazy, but like the amount of issues I would see, just a company mandated password manager fix. Like, so my wife works for a software company and they all have subscriptions, and I'm like, it's not normal in the industry we work in. And she's like, yeah, but nobody ever forgets their password, or just go into SSO or whatever. But yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, it was a surprise when we launched our very first apps, and these would be one of the funny reasons for is we were paying for a lot of iPhones back then. We don't do that anymore. We just give stipends for it. But the company iPhones, nobody would write it down because it wasn't their primary phone. And next thing you know, you're delayed weeks trying to just onboard people onto a very simple app so you can do testing. It was a silly problem to have. We're a lot better about it nowadays. We're just like, hey, just write it down. Nobody's using this. You're not putting anything critical on this iPad.
Absolutely. And so, Mike, which this is a great segue into our next question, right? Because it sounded like when you started at Raymond full time, right, you had this vision. Maybe it was a little challenging for people to understand. Time goes on, the big event, right? ChatGPT releases. So now you guys have an internal innovation working group. So can you tell us more about it and what was the initial goal behind it?
Yeah, so this has been a couple years, actually, it's been several years coming. So in my previous life, when I was at Booz Allen Hamilton, we would do IRAD projects, internal research and development projects, where the firm says we've got X amount of research and development dollars. And then people inside the firm, like myself, leading my group as a senior associate, we would submit proposals. And if your proposal is chosen, you get a budget and you build it out, prototype, and do things like that. And it, in my opinion, was always a very successful model at Booz Allen. And so I always wanted to bring it to Raymond. Now, the reason why it took us so long to get there is because, again, that cash flow issue as a small business, we really couldn't make the investments. And what we did first was we did prioritize, let's go ahead and start bringing developers in-house so we could build some of our ideas. But just because I come up with an idea and I get to prioritize what I want to build in the development group doesn't mean that I'm the only one with good ideas. And far from it. In fact, we need all the people that really grew up in the industry, whereas I'm still consider myself a little bit of an outsider. We need those people doing the work day to day to see where their own inefficiencies are, because that's just the process today. And we want to inject more technology and AI. And so we started this year, we've done several meetings. We meet every 2 weeks in 30 minutes. We might go a little bit over, and I've told plenty of people, like, you can join this working group, But your job on this is not to listen. It is to try new things and report back on it every 2 weeks. You can try whatever you want within reason. There's certain AIs that we will toss over to our IT team to make sure that we would be allowed to use them long term because of cybersecurity compliance and things like that. But within reason, pick an idea, go try it. It's $100 subscription. Go do it. Done. No big deal. Let's see what you guys can come up with. And I was a little nervous launching it at first because I'm a big technology enthusiast, and there's some other people in the firm that are too. I wasn't sure what kind of participation is voluntary. We're not going to force people to do this, and I think that's a really important approach. If you force people to do it, it's their job as opposed to their passion. And I can 100% say that within the first 3 meetings, I was just blown away by everybody's initiative to do this. It's chargeable time. Their initiative to do it, their interest in doing it. All of a sudden, people are generating PowerPoints or videos of them doing this. We had no requirements for the innovation working groups. Just come back and tell us what you liked or what you didn't like. Some of the AI that I was most excited about, people tried out and said, nope, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not working the way they're saying it is. And I was like, that's really good to know. And some of these things that we're finding out are already impacting maybe how we do proposals. We've been using Inkscape 3D, for example. We like Inkscape, or Chaos. Sorry, it's Chaos nowadays. But there's a couple of other AIs that we tried out. And for certain applications, especially when we're making a proposal and a graphic where we need to take it to conceptual design just to try and win the project, there are other options that we can use that do a fantastic job and are faster than using a more, say, design-oriented solution like Chaos is what I would consider it to be. And so we can be faster. We're developing all these new prototype processes. And again, I don't have to be the one as the champion driving all this ideation anymore. That's been a huge lift off my shoulders. And we've got people standing up and really seeing what's available off the shelf, that COTS mindset, and what can we do with it. And we don't have to build everything. We just need to understand what's out there and maybe fill in the gaps with what we want to build. And I think at the end of the day, we're empowering our employees and they're getting excited about it.
And Mike, I think the audience can take that advice, right? Like, and let's go, anyone who wasn't aware. So back in March, Mike gave a very informative presentation at a national conference for building enclosures about the use of AI. And to just summarize what Mike told me, right, there was interest, but people weren't really sure where to go, right? So that exploratory mindset, hey, it's not mandatory. Here's a little bit of money, 20, 50, $100 a month. Go find your LLM of choice and just try it out. If you have Copilot through your organization and IT's approved it, just get your hands on the keyboard and start trying. Because I can speak to that experience too. It is one of the best ways to build interest by just letting people just go do their thing and experiment within certain reasonable bounds, of course.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I will say this. If you're working in the DoD space, please check with your IT team before you just go try random things. There are certain AIs that we have banned from the company because they're not secure, right? But within reason, try things out. If you're someone in the audience that is using Gmail, for example, like a paid Gmail account as your actual email platform as opposed to like Outlook, Gemini's built in. You don't even have to pay for it. And you get their premium, well, not premium, but their paid for tier already built into your Gmail account. And I actually stopped using ChatGPT when I realized I had access to this for free because of some of these other email accounts I have. And I've used it several times today. It's fantastic. And it speeds things up. Some of the things I wasn't quite sure on, I was reviewing some contracts and they had different indemnification language. Well, I'm not to the point where I'll take the entire PDF and upload it, but I'll take the sections, the clauses that I have questions about, and I'll put those clauses in. It's basically redacted at that point. Throw it in and be like, all right, what are my risks? How would you rewrite this to also protect me? And I can send that back to the customer and have improvements in potentially negotiating, of the contract terms and conditions. So just trying these things out, I think, is the most critical thing that anybody can be doing at this stage. And what I would tell anybody that is wanting to try that hasn't tried, don't be embarrassed if you haven't tried. A lot of companies are still trying to figure out what AI is, and that's okay. That's 100% all right. Don't feel like you're late to the game. The game is maybe starting. I'm not even sure we pulled really, pulled the flag to say, hey, the race is on. It's everybody is kind of meandering around the starting line, in my opinion. So try things out. Don't be afraid to fail. In fact, if something doesn't work for you, learning that is just as important, in my opinion, as anything else, because you won't have to worry about it again, and you'll know a little bit more about how AI is supposed to work or could work.
And Mike, that saying you're not late to the game is a really great point, especially because you'll go online and you'll see XYZ use case by firm, and just realize, right, like a little bit of marketing goes a long way. So we're not by any means we're not by any means at the final frontier, but I do like the example that you gave using, right, Gemini within your paid Gmail account. So what other strategies have you kind of employed to help translate, like, right, like, yeah, AI is an abstract concept, great, to actual practical use cases at Raymond? And then can you share any specific examples that have had some real impact?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of advantage over most people because I've been following the development of this for quite some time. If you want to boil down AI's the most available use case is writing. ChatGPT really started in writing. Nick, I'm sure you've probably played around with ChatGPT for that type of use case for a long time. And so now ChatGPT is not going to write a specification for you right off the bat. It would need a tremendous amount of information and training and things of that nature. But it writes well, and this is well documented in the news and the media for, like, oh, kids are using it to write essays, right? But we don't write essays. However, we do write proposals. We do write responses to requests for qualifications and things of that nature. And I think that's a really easy area for someone to try out. You don't need to train a custom GPT or anything like that if you're not ready to do that. Although you can ask AI, how would I train a custom GPT? It'll tell you. It's very helpful, right? But if you wanted to say, I've got to write a proposal, what are some assumptions that I need to understand better if I'm designing a mixed use high rise? It'll start giving you things that you might want to consider and maybe put into your proposal document. It can do very useful things. Within reason, it can get you started on a lot of research too that might go into your proposal. Like if you're doing building envelope and you're doing building envelope commissioning, and let's say you've got the certification, but you've never written the proposal before, which is a true scenario, right? You can ask it, well, could you draft me a proposal for doing building envelope commissioning of that mixed use building, and quote all the ASTMs that I'm going to need to, and all the testing standards that I'm going to need. And it'll get you a nice first draft. It really will. Then you can take that, and hopefully that's gotten you, a head start in doing your proposal and that type of work that's necessary just to get the project, right? We've done a tremendous amount of work on that side. And so one of the things that we've been working on for a while is we do a lot of public sector work. So we probably respond to 400 RFQs per year, requests for qualification. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is copying and pasting historically, where we've got someone's resume and we're taking the projects we want, we put them over into this one, or then we need pictures of our certifications, we put it over here, and we build this new document. Well, our goal is to automate more and more of that. I've already got a marketing coordinator team, and that's great, but I do want to make them more efficient so that they can have more time to really customize the final output and position us better. And so we have put AI behind our firewall. We have our own GPUs, which may sound intimidating to somebody in the audience, but it is doable. There are also software providers that will do this for you if you want to go down that route. But we are spending a lot of time right now actually on our first RAG AI, or retrieval augmented generation AI, that is learning our server, our project server, so that it can generate better resumes and the better project pages and do technical writing or answer questions for anybody in the firm and things of that nature. It's been a fun project where we had to learn how to install open source AI. We're using Llama 3.2 beta B right this second. We had to figure out hardware, which was a little bit daunting, but it's worked out pretty well. And it works. It's already generating resumes in our fully formatted resume template too, which is nice. And it's all generating in Word, not PDF and things of that nature. So it's been successful already, and we're about to do a big upgrade to make it even better.
Beautifully said. And I think the big unlock there, Mike, is I like that term, behind the firewall, where we know the capabilities of these large language models that are trained on, let's just call it the entire internet per se. Now you're starting to get, in this case, open source ad. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's essentially Mike can go take him, this off the shelf model by Meta, right? Is Llama, and
Yes.
he can, plug and play. That's the software. The GPUs are the hardware. Bring them together to make this thing run on Raymond's specific data. Hopefully, I got that generally correct.
Perfect.
So, like Mike said, like you don't need to know how to do this all yourself. There's resources out there, and I had the pleasure of taking a tour of NVIDIA's campus sometime last month, and it is amazing. You talk about GPUs and the firepower behind the computing to make the machine run is pretty crazy. But that, I think, puts you squarely ahead of many firms out there, Mike, because like you said, some are still just trying to figure out like what is ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah, it probably puts us further ahead. Again, I don't want to make anybody feel like they're too far behind. There are startups that will help you do this, so it's not something insurmountable. We chose to do it because of cybersecurity requirements with Department of Defense projects. The original version of what I just described, we actually just had it as a website using Google Firebase, which is just Google's cloud solution, and it integrated directly with ChatGPT. That can be done pretty easily, even if you don't program. In fact, one of the things we're doing on the proposal side, where we're actually generating a price proposal right now for testing purposes, is still just a Google sheet tied to the ChatGPT API. Now we've trained a custom GPT, and again, it's a little bit further than you might just casually do today if you try something, but you don't have to have all the infrastructure that I built in order to get a tremendous amount of value out of this relatively quickly.
Which makes a lot of sense, because to your Google Sheet prototype, right? Like, even as a first guess, even if it's just, don't train a custom GPT, just use it and copy and paste it back and forth just to get a proof of concept. There's also nothing wrong with that.
Hey, the first proof of concept, I brought in a Georgia Tech computer science intern. He had the proof of concept proven within 45 days, and the intern rate. So even if you're an incredibly small business, listening into this, you probably already bring in interns anyways. You can probably get a computer science, undergrad to say whether or not this will work for you, and then see if you want to do more with it. Very, very little risk in doing something like that.
And that is a great segue into my next question, because part of the excitement and the value of innovation is like, you don't know how it's all going to work out, because if you did, it wouldn't really be innovation. So how do you guys measure the success or value of your innovation efforts, particularly when resources are limited, such as like a small business in our industry?
That is always a challenge. It's kind of, if you think about preventative care, how do you measure like what didn't happen when it could have happened, or when it happened anyways? One of the easiest ones we've done is the simplest example I can think of is already with that price proposal generator. We had to test it on real world scenarios. It makes sense. Does it generate a proposal? Well, I'm going to have someone generate it through the AI, and then I'm going to have someone do it the traditional process. And so we did them side by side. And what we saw was we did two proposals, relatively simple ones to start, nothing incredibly complicated. And we were already estimating on just two proposals, we saved 6 to 8 hours of project manager and discipline director time and pricing right off the bat. Just the back and forth that has to happen. The time they spent reviewing it, drafting, editing, all those things just went completely out the window when we used the AI, and the AI was perfectly fine. So, I will always say you need a chaperone AI. I'm not saying that you can just generate something and then just submit it to a customer. That's a horrible idea for the record,
Yep.
right? But when we compare to contrast, the initial draft saved 6 to 8 hours in those two particular cases combined across the two, and then someone proofed it, and we used the AI version, and that's what was actually ended up being submitted to the customer. And now, because we know it works, we're expanding our testing to more complicated proposals, and our development plan is now looking to squeeze in how we can make it as part of our RQ generator. We call it mCloud, build it all into that, and have it as a more formalized resource inside the firm.
Which hits on a couple points that you've already discussed, right? So simple use case, which is writing, that you could get started today. The return on investment is there, because what I think is really important that you said is you didn't just assume there was going to be an ROI. You ran the two process side by side. How do we do it today, whatever that may look like, and then this more innovative process, and it proved out pretty quickly that it worked.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important to prototype and test your theories. Nick, I've told you in the past, we've got this new spec writing software for DoD use case. Our initial thesis showed good results, where what we were trying to do is have AI read Revit files so that we could generate a DoD spec file, right? We tried it on architecture first, and just looking at the architecture discipline and those sections, that division, and it worked really well. We've got 90+% fidelity to what the designer would have done from just AI reading and generating the table of contents. So we're like, okay, let's try it with engineering. We tried for months to make this thing work, and it just would not work. There's not enough data in Revit. And so we had to pivot completely, and we're actually going to take a reverse angle now. And we can go into detail if you want, but we've come up with a new way to collect data so that we can eventually have enough specification data as a AI training data set, so we could try the initial thesis. But the original thesis showed good results and then was completely unusable. So we found a way to, I think, make us more efficient in the end, but it's not even AI enabled yet. It will come back to that thesis later. So I don't think it was time lost per se, but there was definitely an argument we could have moved on earlier as well.
And Mike, as I understand it, right? So there are certain tools in addition to the first one we spoke about, the inspection platform. There's other tools that you guys release for use outside of Raymond, right?
Yes. So for example, the specification software I was just talking about, we hope to go to market, give or take, by the end of May. And so actually I'll be at a conference this week and talking to a lot of our industry partners about, hey, we'd like to see you try out our software, and we're going to commercialize it and hopefully long-term accomplish our big goal of getting that training data set so Revit and AI can actually do something useful. We have another software platform. It's called Quantum. That one, for example, we made it free to use for everybody. We just saw there's an opportunity to do something useful in the market, and I'm not worried about monetizing it yet. We'll monetize it down the road and build up a user base, which is already happening, and it's going well. We're getting good feedback from it, and most importantly, people find it useful. We'll build advanced AI related features to it later that people can choose to buy if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're a little bit different in that approach. Before AI really hit the zeitgeist, so to speak, I think a lot of firms were building their own tools and keeping them in-house in order to protect their margins. I'm not against that strategy if that's what your business is doing, but I also see a strategy where you could take a SaaS approach make yourselves better, and then also generate new revenue streams by just taking what already works for you and just commercializing it. I don't see any issue with doing that.
And Mike, if someone in the audience is just interested in looking at what you guys have, I think we could throw something in the show notes to just get them either in touch with you, or if you guys have a website on, hey, here's what we make commercially available.
They can definitely talk to me. We have a couple of different websites, and happy to talk to anybody that has interest in software we've built or that we're planning to build and release. Happy to talk to them.
And I would encourage it, right? Because it's not just, if you're, especially if you're in the same vertical that Mike and Raymond are in, it's not just another startup, right? It's created by a company that has experience in what you do and has thought about how the thing should be crafted. Which is another great segue into our next question, Mike. So, in your view, how can a small business position itself as a technology leader in the AEC industry, even without the resources of a large firm, right? Because like we've discussed, it's the margins are what they are, the industry is what it is, but you guys have found a way to overcome those obstacles to be on the path you are today.
Well, I think there's still a tremendous opportunity in the industry just to be more knowledgeable than everyone else. And Nick, this podcast is a great example of that, where talking to people to learn about their experiences or what is working or not for them is, I think, critical, right? You can definitely take that tact. The conference that I presented at a couple of months ago, this national conference, I'm not there to pitch my services. I'm talking about AI as a whole. And so there's still plenty of room, plenty of space, plenty of, vertices inside of AE or AEC and AI that you could become the expert on without ever developing anything. I think that is one path. Or if you want to prioritize brand recognition for being a technology thinker or futurist or anything along those lines, there's absolutely an opportunity for that. The other big one is you don't have to build it. You don't. I would love to be building to my heart's content forever and have an army of programmers that are also using AI to develop everything I can think of under the sun. But realistically, other people are going to build great tools and platforms out there, and those are just going to be SaaS models where you can buy them and just pay a subscription per seat or per company or something to that effect. Starting an innovation working group with your existing employees is a great way to just experiment and try things and empower and energize your workforce. I think that is the easiest way to do it. You don't have to be an expert on anything. You just have to have a desire to improve. Not because you're not hitting all of your KPIs or something, but just because you want to think about doing things a little bit differently. Google AEC AI and tools will just start popping up. There are a couple of people you can follow on LinkedIn that are posting on AI all the time. There's just some of those leaders, and they just talk about tools they've come across or companies. And if one strikes your fancy, try it. Almost all of them have a free trial. Almost all of them. Some are maybe a little hard to get a hold of because they're startups and they have limited resources too. Don't waste anybody's time. I say they don't have a free trial, pay for a month's subscription and try it out. They're startups, but try things. Don't worry about breaking anything to start. Use something where the data is not going to be proprietary to your customer, and just experiment. That's where you can be as a small business, and you may find things that actually save you money and then eventually lead up to you being able to make bigger investments in personnel for programming or whatever it may be.
And well said, Mike. And then to cap it off, I'll also add is you're a small business, right? You're agile. You're not like the big boat of the 30,000 employee company in our industry that, for better or worse, just does not change very quickly. So there are definitely some advantages to being of that size.
It is helpful with me being the president, being the champion. I will 100% say that. Now, we're a big enough small business that I can say there will be resources in our budget, our annual budget, in order to invest in software development. But if you're senior leadership or you're someone that is just, I'm truly passionate about it, and you're listening to this, go to your senior leadership and say, hey, I just want to be the champion, empower me, and I want to see what we can come up with. I think those are things you can do as a small business. It's never too early to start trying. And again, just trying new things when it comes to this. I always say in my presentations, there are going to be a lot of tools that are really successful and make it long term. There are going to be a lot that are really good tools that are just going to flounder or be acquired by other companies. And there'll be some that will never see the light of day. Don't worry about those things. Like, even if you like a tool and it just doesn't make it in the market, someone will probably build it, or maybe you'll build it long term. But being a small business is a limiting factor, but it shouldn't be a roadblock that you can't get around.
Absolutely. And Mike, what final piece of advice can you give to AEC professionals that are looking to lead an innovation, no matter the size of their organization?
I think keeping an open mind. And what I mean by that is recognizing that you don't have to come up with all the ideas. I will say, because I was so early to talking about AI, 2017 was real early for our industry. Not a lot of people wanted to listen to me when I said, hey, this is what we should be aiming for. This is what we should be thinking about long term. I was not popular in those types of conversations. It's like, well, Mike's talking about this stuff again, right? And so maybe I had to go it alone for a little bit, but nowadays you don't have to be that way. Build a team, whether senior leadership in your company is involved or not. Build a team of people that are passionate about this, and just come up with things that you think you'd like to see. Now, those solutions might not exist today, and that's all right. But that means if they don't exist today, maybe build it yourself. Who knows? You can be on the lookout for it so you can identify it first, which may be a competitive advantage in the future. And that's great. But also, you might see the stepping stone technologies come along. And these, as the industry with AI evolves, I think it's going to, be more fun, and everybody's going to be more productive. And, building a group of people that you can work with on this. And they don't even have to be at your company, by the way. Network, use LinkedIn, use conferences. I tell other people that I run into all the things I'm excited about all the time, maybe still too much than they really want to hear, but build a group of people that you can bounce ideas off of, whether you get to try them or they don't work or they haven't been invented yet. Just start those conversations. I think that is the most critical thing that you can do today.
Excellent. And Mike, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us today. Listeners have questions, right? Want to find out more about kind of the some of your guys' development efforts that you're going commercial with. What is the best way for them to connect with you?
Email. I read all of my emails no matter what. I may not respond right then and there, but email, I will read it and I will get back to you.
Beautiful. And we will get Mike's email included in the show notes. And Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Until next time. Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.